Hello, hello, and welcome to My Astro Diaries podcast series. I'm Ange, a Western tropical locational astrologer, and today, for the very first episode, I will be guiding you through my own personal experience with remote activation in astrocartography. First of all, what is remote activation in astrocartography? Maybe you have heard about it, maybe you didn't, but now is the right time to finally explain it in mere detail. So Jim Lewis, the founder of astrocartography, introduced the concept of remote activation to explain how individuals can tap into the energies of specific locations without being physically present there. According to Lewis, the energy of a place is not confined to its geographical boundaries. Instead, it can be accessed through various means, such as relationships, cultural engagement, or even through the people who reside there. For instance, if someone lives on your Jupiter ascendant line, their presence in your life can bring the expansive and fortunate qualities associated with Jupiter, with your sense of self, even if you've never been to that location yourself. This concept allows individuals to experience the benefits of astrocartography without the need for relocation or travel. By connecting with people, cultures, or practices associated with a particular line in your chart, you can activate its energies and integrate them into your life. If you're interested in exploring how remote activation might work for you, let's continue. But before we begin, I would like to mention printable astrocartography diaries on myastrodiary.com. With printable astrocartography diaries, you can learn basic astrocartography through journaling. You can pick the set of major lines that you feel drawn to for travel or to remotely activate and get a digital diary made just for that journey. You can use these diaries to reflect, write, and tune into the energy of chosen major lines. The goal is to learn and experience at the same time while having fun, along with these journals being a personal space to reflect over time. Guidance on learning basic astrology and astrocartography is also included. They help you understand the key concepts while giving you space to track and reflect on your own experiences. Your reflections grow with you, so you can revisit and update your journey whenever you like. These diaries are, of course, designed to be printed, but you can also open them through a tablet and write with an iPad pen. The link will be included in the description below. And now we can continue. Chapter 0, a little introduction to Uranus descendant line in Aquarius, along with an honorable mention of my Neptune descendant line in Capricorn, as it also played a little bit of a role in Chapter 2. Okay, so my Uranus descendant line in Aquarius is one of the most powerful placements for me, and definitely my favorite line. When I'm under that energy and when it's activated, it feels like the people who come into my life show up to shake things up in a big way. Relationships and connections happen suddenly, and all of the connections that I am going to mention today happened quote unquote out of nowhere, and they always end up changing how I see myself and how I see others as well. I can openly say that Uranus DC line absolutely transformed my life and is definitely going to, as Pluto is going to transit over that Uranus soon directly when it reaches the 5th degree. And let's talk a little bit about condition of Uranus. It doesn't have the best reputation out there like Venus or Jupiter or Sun, because it brings surprises, but it also brings a lot of freedom and sometimes chaos. Yeah, but it always pushes to growth. That's its goal. Uranus doesn't have a filter. It's very blunty and very direct energy. I can also say that Aquarius energy in general is kind of like that. And that's the key element why Aquarius energy gets highly misunderstood by certain chance, a certain person comes up and listens to usually the truth that they don't want to hear. We stumbled on each other and it happened that they heard that. It is so annoying, and maybe it's also a contribution from Mercury in Sagittarius, and my Mercury and Uranus are in a sextile, so that means that they are working together. And my Uranus being in Aquarius means that it feels at home. Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. The traditional ruler is Saturn. So when Uranus is in its sign where it feels at home, feels even more strong and alive. And as I mentioned, my Uranus also makes a sextile to my Mercury, but that means as my Mercury is conjunct Pluto, it also makes a sextile to my Pluto. And that's where the things get interesting. That means my Uranus and Pluto work together in a sense of transformations. Keep in mind that this is a generational aspect, as Uranus and Pluto move very slowly. But that doesn't mean that aspect isn't triggered. They work together. It has a flavor with Mercury. So my mind changed in all of these stories. I mean, in the end of the day, my life completely changed. So it's definitely Pluto influence in here. So after all of this that I'm going to speak about today, conclusion is that I am thinking differently, communicating differently, and more deeply than I ever did before, and seeing things from completely new angles, all thanks to remote activation. But let's not forget my Neptune being also conjunct my descendant. Neptune isn't actually connected to any other planets in my chart. It is a singular. That means it is quote unquote operating on its own. So it breathes a little bit more on its own. So Uranus and Neptune, even though they are outer planets, quite play a role in my birth chart. I have a love and hate relationship with my Neptune, I have to admit. And the hate part is the illusions. I had a lot of illusions in my life around others, and it cost a lot of time. And Capricorn isn't a big fan of being in Neptune by being connected to Saturn and Saturn ruling time. So I hate wasting my time, and especially wasting time on people that are not worth it. I mean, we all hate that, but I think about that constantly in the last period, and I think that's the major regret. Even though if I didn't have those experiences with people, then I wouldn't have a lot of lessons that I have now in my practice of astrology. That's the reason why I have that love and hate relationship with Neptune. I can't put my finger on it clearly, but that's also what Neptune is about, right? All of that confusion, fogginess, illusion, and a lot of dreaminess. Yeah, I was very imaginative my whole life, and that changed a little bit ever since Pluto passed my Neptune, which we will be definitely talking about. It's an honorable mention, and I need to make a whole episode for that. Uranus and Neptune play both a role, but Uranus DC is the main character for all of the happenings and all of the chapters that I'm going to mention. So let's begin with them. Chapter 1, meeting quote-unquote Brandy and remotely activating my Mercury conjunct Pluto ascendant lines in Sydney, Australia. It all started back around the end of 2021, I think. I just quit my job as a digital marketing manager without any plan B. I had bills to pay, but I had no idea what am I going to do next. I thought that I will get into ads production, and I did, and it was the worst experience ever. So prior to working as a digital marketing manager, I studied to become a producer and never worked in the field, except that one unfortunate commercial. And during those miserable 2 weeks, I have met team from the UK, Germany, and from Croatia. And all of those teams were super nice to me. except my team from my country. And that's where I realized, hey, maybe just working here isn't a thing in my own country. Maybe I should connect with people around the world. That's the first time that I had that thought that flashed out of nowhere. And then after those 2 miserable, very long weeks, I had no idea what am I going to do. I was applying for jobs, but I knew that I'm just doing this out of habit and knowing that deeply inside of me, I need to get out of my comfort zone and try something new. That's when I decided to maybe give freelance a chance and not apply to any certain company and just see what happens. And I was applying to jobs completely at random, out of panic mode, sick in bed, just clicking and sending. And then a woman, let's name her Brandy, that's not her real name, answered me, and I was like, oh, okay. I don't even remember saying hi. And from that moment, I started, of course, after the procedure of hiring, I started working with her. And the first thing I realized, whoa, there's no more stress, that the tempo that I was used to in my own country. And then, little by little, I started noticing complete changes. For the first time in my life, I had somebody to talk about astrology after being alone in it for so long. And she was quite knowledgeable, and it made me feel less alone. And then I realized that she's also a lunar Aquarian in the 8th house, which was kind of a surprise for me of such an alignment. And that's the time when I realized, okay, this relationship isn't a coincidence. It's happening for a deeper reason. And little by little, doing work for her, she spontaneously asked me, why don't you start writing for me? I have so much work to do and you have so much creativity. You can start writing my blog. And from that blog, it went into a completely different direction. I started writing a complete course for her. And that's when I realized, when I researched so many books and went through the whole philosophy of Tantra and Hinduism, to be honest, nothing resonated. I was just discovering myself as a researcher and as a writer through that work. Of course, I learned a lot of stuff, but that philosophy, that's probably the reason why I'm not so interested in Vedic astrology. But I met myself on a completely different level. Just to be clear, at that time, I knew nothing about remote activation. I knew about locational astrology and astrocartography, but I started diving more into astrocartography in 2022 because of this. Just to make it clear, I was more into only natal astrology at the time. And little by little, I started to change. And within her location in Sydney, my Mercury is conjunct Pluto, but on the ascendant in Sagittarius. And I started, after feeling lost for such a long time, I started gaining a completely different sense of self. And I literally felt like I was traveling on a daily basis just from my room. And I'm grateful for Uranus DC line for this, as Uranus DC line in Aquarius basically feels like a vessel for me for the rest of the world. Remote activation is just way easier for me from here than on other parts of the world. That's something that I realized through traveling and just starting to compare. When I'm more near my airy Aquarius, remote activation has always been more dominant. And when I'm not, like for example, when I'm on my Sun Imam Quali in Scorpio line, nothing pretty much happens related to remote activation. But yeah, let's stick to the topic. And after working with her for a while, I was in a rocky emotional state at the time. I thought that my life was going in one direction, but actually it wasn't. And I started drifting away from my friends that were actually not my friends. And I started realizing that, and I was sad about that. And all of the situations that happened from 2020 to 2021, and even 2019, to be honest, those 3 years were very, very turbulent for me. And then one day, even though I scheduled a therapy session on Christmas of 2021, I had a mini spiritual awakening and I was completely rejuvenated. It was happening in a blink of a second, but it was tremendous. It was tremendous. And I remember going to the therapist and saying, I know you won't believe me. And when I was scheduling this appointment, I felt awful. But now I feel like a completely different person. And I feel fine. I just have to admit that I feel fine. And I just want to discuss that transition from feeling awful to feeling absolutely fine. And my therapist had that in mind, my whole history with him. And he realized that I was going through a frontal cortex development, which aligns with the timing that I will mention later on. And then I decided to restart my life again. I moved out back again on my Saturn local space line to begin a new journey, a new chapter. But that didn't end up well. Chapter 2, meeting quote unquote Skip and remotely activating my North Node Imamkwali line / South Node Midheaven line in Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK. And in between that moving out and working constantly and becoming a writer that I never intended on becoming because I never saw me in that light, I ended up getting another job as well, but more technical one in marketing, and it was really high paying, again freelance. So this writing became just a side project. It was never a full-time job. And then I met, let's call him Brandy and let's call him Skip. If you played Sims 2, you will know Brandy and Skip. So yeah, I met Skip, and guess what? Another lunar Aquarian in the 8th house. But this time from my North Node Imamkwali / South Node Midheaven. As soon as I had a call with him, as soon as we met, I knew that I know this person. Like the very minute when I saw him. And it was never something romantic. I felt like I saw my brother or something like that, a relative. And at that moment, when I realized that he was a lunar Aquarian in the 8th house, when he gave me his birth chart, when we started working, I knew that this is something even deeper and what was going on. I worked for him when I started moving out and like being in contact with him on a daily basis. 2 months later, I had a major spiritual awakening. At the same time, during that spiritual awakening, Pluto was passing exactly on my Neptune. That was a very specific alignment. And like I had a mini episode of a spiritual awakening back in December for Christmas, and then I had a full-blown spiritual awakening in April. And it lasted for 7 days straight. Everything within that week cleaned up in my life. It was a major spring cleaning. All of my ex-friends shown their true faces. I realized who I am. I looked deeply inside of myself within. My whole world changed. He was exactly on 0 degrees in Newcastle upon Tyne. I won't keep the locations private because it's part of my chart, so sorry. These people will never even see this, so I can even actually say their real names, but I'll just give them names from The Sims. Yeah, that's when I realized that I have to dedicate my life to astrocartography because I knew that this was related. I opened my astrocartography chart and I started analyzing and learning, as I wasn't very interested till that point. I was, as I mentioned, only interested in natal astrology, and that was the turning point. And then I started studying like crazy. You know, the remote activation with Skip was definitely the most intense one that I have ever experienced. I can't really chalk it up to coincidence, mostly because I don't believe in coincidences. But get this, his ascendant is exactly on my ascendant, by degree. Perfect conjunction. And I never had this in my entire life. That means that our descendant is also in conjunction, and I have Neptune conjunct to my descendant. And at that time, Pluto was exactly on my Neptune when I was in daily contact with Skip. The only difference is that his moon isn't on the same degree as mine, but he is a night chart, which means that his moon in Aquarius in the 8th house is also his ruler, just like mine is. That was the time when I had that spiritual awakening and when the most craziest synchronicities unfolded in my life and led me to becoming a full-time locational astrologer today, as that was my main hunch. So with Brandy, it was just the beginning and it peaked with Skip. And that connection was very electric and everything was buzzing of electricity during those 7 days. I even had a power cut. It was that insane. I also had like a full-on burnout from electricity and being nonstop on devices. It was very Aquarian, I guess, but a little bit too much as I, almost went crazy, I have to admit. I, at first, didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't have any guidance, nothing. It was very, very, very spontaneous. I had a roommate, but she didn't had a clue what was happening to me. And it didn't end up well. I moved out in a matter of 1 day. It didn't end up well, but here I am, completely normal. So it's just a very intense experience. And please don't be scared because this is my unique experience. And it led me to the life that I am living today. I mean, me before that remote activation, I was a completely different person. And the past me was always imagining to have the life that I'm having now. So even though Pluto can be scary as hell in a combination with the Lulu Neptune, but it can also dissolve a lot of stuff and a lot of yuckiness that wasn't serving, even to the point of making you go full on crazy mode. So yeah, it was the most intense period of my life. And there were also moments when I was literally thinking that I am dying. Yeah, just Pluto things. So transits, timing, most important stuff as activations happen exactly then. This is why in the following chapter, you will see that nothing was happening the same when I was remotely activating the same line during different time. And this is like the key element to remote activation, astrocartography, and timing. So this is the main reason why is it important to have readings with advanced astrologers, as grasping timing in astrology is a little bit of advanced technique, and it took me also quite a while to sync with it. Simply, your chart is breathing. Nothing is static, and it's very important to acknowledge that, and it can be freeing for a lot of people. Simply as people usually think, oh, I have good lines and bad lines, and I'm living on my bad line, and everything is a disaster. That is simply not true, as nothing is static in life. So the experience with activating North Node Imam Kwali through work with Skip was very deep and triggering at the same time, but it pushed me into a whole new level of understanding. That experience is what really drove me to dedicate myself fully to astrocartography and locational astrology. And I couldn't be more grateful for that synchronicity in my life, as even though I was working a completely different job that I'm absolutely not into anymore, it brought me so much that I would never realize at the time. So everything unfolds in its own timing. And guess what? My nodal reversal is exactly right now while I am filming this, and just making a beautiful conclusion around all of this is such a beautiful timing. I'm gonna cry. So we have to make a pause. It was like that spiritual awakening was waiting for me, and being in daily contact with him was the spark that set it off. Maybe something else would trigger that as well, but I think that remote activation and timing and Uranus descendant line and Neptune descendant line all played an interconnected role into it. That is at least what my gut is telling me. I don't know. That is just my conclusion. as an astrologer. What is your opinion? Please let me know in the comments. Chapter 3, remotely activating North Node Imamkweli/South Node Midheaven once again, but through a different person in a different timeline, and this time in London in the UK. Being in contact with my friend from my Sun Imamkweli/Uranus DC line. She lives in many locations, but at the time she was studying. When I met her, she was on Sun Imamkweli, and I remotely activated again when she was in London, the North Node Imamkweli. And our boss was also a lunar Aquarian. That was also in London. I never found out her ascendant sign, so I don't know if she's an 8th house lunar Aquarian or not, but she was the main connection why me and my friend that was living on my Sun Imamkweli, Uranus DC, and on North Node Imamkweli exactly at that period. But I have no idea her rising sign. Yeah. She was the main connection. So another lunar Aquarian, blue-eyed lunar Aquarian once again. Then Pluto and Neptune drifted apart from each other. So no spiritual awakenings, no frontal cortex developments. It happens only once. And I actually bought a ticket to come to see her in London, but that never happened, as the day after I bought the ticket, I had a crazy dream where I was her lawyer. I was advocating for her because she unalived 3 people. And I was her voice of reason in that dream. And she was all over the place and panicking. And I was just, listen, I will take care of this and I will save you from the situation. Don't worry. And I woke up and I immediately texted her what the dream was about. And she was in shock. Her jaw dropped to the floor. She was like, how do you know what happened to me? Because I didn't tell you yet. And I was like, what are you talking about? I just woke up and I bought the tickets to see you yesterday. And she was like, sorry, but you won't be able to come because I'm kicked out on the street by my 3 roommates. And it was happening completely out of nowhere. She didn't expect that at all. And she basically had a situation similar like I did with my roommate just earlier that I mentioned during my spiritual awakening. That was happening when North Node Imamkweli was remotely activated, but in Newcastle upon Tyne. And I was like, wait a minute, this is too specific and this is way too odd. So all of the mentioned people, my best friend, Brandy, Skip, they were never in my location and I was never in there. And you now tell me, is remote activation fake or real? For me, it changed my life. Absolutely. My point of view on life completely changed. Everything changed. My inner world changed. And I'm really curious how it will feel to go live on the line. I need to compare and see, get inside of that rabbit hole to compare the differences after I go there and see. And definitely lunar nodes are lines that are least discussed, let's be real, and the most intriguing lines for me. Absolutely. From that moment, past lives started making more sense to me, even though I was always denying there were past lives, yeah, And from that period, I said, yeah, I had something with the UK, 100%. And then 6 months after that spiritual awakening and North Node Imamkweli remote activation, I've met my partner, or actually we just got together because we knew each other from our past lives. And then when we got together, he told me that he had a past life regression that was related to the UK. And I was like, okay, I have to go deeper in this. Maybe we were connected. I am still looking to have a proper past life regression. If you know a good past life regressionist, therapist, or anyone in this that won't make me go spiral or something, I really want to find someone who I can trust completely. And this is the reason why the time has passed, as I believe in timing. I will find my past life regressionist when the time comes. But if you know, as we are sending a signal out there, maybe this story is continuing and I will find my recommendation through this podcast. Who knows? So I definitely, from that period, believe that past lives exist. Then I heard a couple of stories related to past life regression that I cannot deny. And then Brandy, after all of this has passed, was telling me that she had a past life in France and that I was involved in that past life. And guess what? What's crossing France? Again, North Node Imanqueli. So, yeah, I never had the vision of that life that she was mentioning. I only just feel that it is something related to the UK. So, I don't know. That was her vision. Those were some very, very interesting alignments. So, me and lunar nodes are definitely some unfinished business. There's just so much to explore and to be continued, for sure. Chapter 4, remotely activating a certain line by traveling all of a sudden to a certain country and then using remote activation afterwards. In this chapter, we will be speaking about Rika and her midsummer retreat in Finland. The line that we will be discussing about is Jupiter descendant line in Aquarius. So remote activation can be very, very juicy. My last, but I hope not least, alignment and synchronicity happened just before I launched My Astro Diaries. I was in retreat groups for content creation. Before I launched My Astro Diaries, I was thinking maybe I can do a little bit of photography and content creation in general for retreats and meet new people. And I was searching for work that I can also analyze my lines along with doing content creation at the same time across the globe. That didn't happen much as I started doing client work. As soon as I launched My Astro Diaries, it was a boom. I just started getting clients, and I just couldn't go and travel whenever because I didn't know when I'm gonna have a booking. It was just not aligning, but maybe that time will come again. And that's basically how I met Rika. I highly always recommend her retreats in Finland, Winter Bliss, and Midsummer. I went to Midsummer to work for her, and it was an instant click. Similar like to Skip. And of course, Rika's name is her real name, as we are friends till this very day, and I want to promote her work. She is so original, and guess her moon placement. You have one shot. Yeah, a lunar Aquarian in the 8th house. Another alignment and another person that has blue eyes. So that was a crazy synchronicity, except this time it was not remote activation. It was actual travel exactly in between my Jupiter descendant line in Aquarius with the sextile with my Saturn midheaven in Aries. But it was more leaning on Jupiter descendant line. And yeah, that was an experience that I wrote about in my Astrocartography diaries. I will make a separate episode about it. I still use that line and that area for remote activation through daily wellness practices, but definitely you should check out her website and her social media, rikasyoga.com, and book a retreat in Finland, whether a winter bliss. It's booked fully, by the way, for 2025, but there are still spots open for midsummer in 2026 in June. And it is an experience that I recommend for everybody. Everybody should feel that at least once. Maybe you think Finland, it's so far away, it's such a random country. You are fooling yourself. I mean, I thought a little bit as well as, what am I going to do there? How? I never been there. Those are like the first thoughts, rambling thoughts that come up. It just, when I think about it now, it is so funny, as it was the best travel experience that I ever had. And that's where I baptized My Astro Diaries, as I just launched it in a Finnish lake under the midnight sun. Yeah, the most unique experience ever. So if you're creating something and want to bless your business or new chapter in life or anything similar, midsummer is your experience, believe me. So yeah, with Finland, I learned so many practices in just a couple of days. And till this very day, there's so many alignments with birch trees, I had the craziest dream there that I'm still analyzing. You have the whole story on my Astrocartography diaries. As I said, I will dedicate a full episode to analysis of my stay in Finland through this podcast. But yeah, I still, to this very day, remotely activate this line, and I'm definitely gonna go to Finland again. Chapter 5. Remotely activating Venus conjunct Mars on the midheaven for work purposes. I started remotely activating my Mars MC conjunct Venus MC for steady work and for consistent earnings as a full-time writer. So from one remote activation to another, but for actually making decent amount of money. It is definitely my favorite conjunction for client work, for earning money. I have a lot of clients from that area, East Coast, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, New York, all of those areas through my Astro Diaries today. Even though I don't work for that company anymore for writing, as I work full-time now for myself, I still remotely activate that line, and I'm super grateful. My voice and my image flourishes there. I really, really enjoy Venus conjunct Mars midheaven, especially in Charlotte, North Carolina. Besides that, I also enjoy the West Coast and, yeah, Utah and Colorado. I will keep that story separately for sure. Yeah, through time. It's too early. That's the area. Okay, West Coast also for client work, but Utah and that area for my secret sauce that I don't want to tell out yet. Some of my clients know. I told them, but publicly I will keep it for another time. So you can use remote activation for personal transformation like I did with myself in Sydney. Career opportunities if you feel stuck with your surroundings and the pay is low, the opportunities aren't quite open-minded, and you see that there's not going to happen a lot of growth. Also for spiritual growth, and this is of course my favorite one, you could say that I feel like I travel the whole world. I'm far from it. I am well traveled, but my remote activation situations are way more profound. Maybe it's the timing and the alignments. And when I compare the actual fourth lunar Aquarian that I encountered and then personal happenings at home, it is a different experience. I mean, when you are remotely activating, it's like you are watching a concert on YouTube, and when you are there, it is a whole different experience. But as my experiences were so intense, especially the spiritual ones, it was very specific. Like for work, like with Venus midheaven and Mars midheaven, I can say it's a YouTube concert. The situation with the UK, it was too specific, and it is something that will probably never happen again. And that way, it's a very unique experience. So it depends on the intensity, I think, of a certain situation, how you are using remote activation. And you can also use it for other ways of work. It depends on what you are seeking and in what direction do you want to grow. For example, creative expression, just for energy work, intentions, and similar. But I think that in that case, you will have to have knowledge of your birth chart a little bit and your astrocartography map, just so you know what you are going to target for what specific intention. In my case, everything that I told here was 100% spontaneous. I never had an intention to have a spiritual awakening, to become a writer. I thought that was never going to happen when I was analyzing my birth chart when I was back in high school. Simply, I never saw myself that I'm going to be in any sort of writing business or anything similar, in any kind of self-expression in that direction. And yeah, simply you can use it for a variety of stuff that you can either use on a daily basis or you want to do transformational work. So for example, if you are scared, and you definitely don't need to be scared, of your Pluto lines, Chiron lines, Uranus lines, Saturn lines, or any specific placement that you don't feel comfortable in your birth chart, I suggest that you bit by bit approach it through remote activation first. Remember that astrocartography and astrology in general, the goal is to bring subconscious to conscious. All of these lines were part of myself, but I had no idea, as I didn't have any connections to Australia except my family living there. So even though a lot of situations were aligning from Australia that I never paid attention to before Brandy. I mean, my period was specific because of my personal healing period. I would now use remote activation for different kind of stuff than healing, as I am after all of those unique experiences basically healed from those stuff that were hurting me at the time. So I was finding myself. And if you are finding yourself, but you feel limited by time, money, the noise of the outer world, and just limitations in general, remote activation can be profoundly helpful. So looking back, a remote activation didn't just show me what locations could do for me. It connected me to people I wouldn't have met otherwise, and it gave me the confidence to write. And it brought me back to astrology in a deep personal way. It's incredible how remote activation can be precise. Even the smallest activations, connecting with one person in a city halfway across the world, can ripple into life-changing transformations. So connect with communities online. Trust me, this is the best thing that you can use remote activation for. Yeah, definitely. This is the reason why I love communities, why I love Uranus descendant line, that I live nearby. I am sure that Uranus DC has helped me with remote activation simply as it's connected with technology. And also, that I didn't mention in the previous episode, is that I also live near Neptune descendant line, and Neptune rules overseas waters, and it doesn't know for boundaries. And all of these situations had nothing to do with boundaries. I was totally boundless. So astrocartography, even though through remote activation, is an absolutely lived experience for me. It's finding those places that you never heard about. I mean, I never heard about Kirkkonummi in Finland before, or even Newcastle upon Tyne. And those two places changed my life forever, for sure. And God knows how many places are out there that can change your life forever. And I was seeking for this answer like crazy when I figured this out, when I figured those patterns of them being lunar Aquarians, of them having like a similar mission to show me. And once I realized those lessons, they weren't in my life anymore, except Rika. Me and Rika are good friends now, even though we met through work. Basically, all of the people that I met, that I mentioned here, I met them all through work. So I think that's the magic of Mercury conjunct Pluto in the 6th house that I am also working with right now with this podcast. It is all aligned, and I'm absolutely certain of that. So now I would like to hear your stories with remote activation. Think about it. If you thought that you never had a remote activation experience, maybe you actually did, but you just didn't connect the dots yet. Analyze your astrocartography map. Go into mere details. It doesn't need to be just major astrocartography lines. In my particular case, it was, but it can actually unravel through latitude lines as well, through certain transits that were happening in different parts of the world. Yeah, I encourage you to go deeply into the rabbit hole to connect all of the patterns and to deepen your understanding with remote activation, astrocartography, to learn what was actually going on. With all of this, introspection should be like a completely natural skill to you. It plays a big role into detecting, I must admit, as if I wasn't introspective at the time and as I am right now, I will probably think that all of that was random, a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences at all, especially after this story. And just try to listen to that inner voice and to research like crazy. So yeah, maybe I have an afflicted Mercury, but I'm super grateful for that Pluto that is conjunct my Mercury, because when I sense something, I have to go to the bottom of that, especially when it's a specific feeling. And it led me to my calling. Actually, the lesson of all of that, beginning from Brandy to Rika, from getting back to astrology to baptizing my business once I opened it in her retreat, I made a full circle and I publicly started doing locational astrology and astrocartography. And I love that my story is like this. So self-discovery and remote activation definitely played a huge role in my life. And I never thought of it this way until now. And like a full circle, as I was always connecting the dots. Why is this like this? And why is this like that? And why do they all feel so familiar to me? And yeah, so don't fear your lines. Don't fear anything. It is all part of you. It is all open for you to do it like a quest for whatever you are searching for. Is it updating your creativity? Is it meeting yourself? Is it changing your habits? Finding that tribe, finding that community? Even though if it's online, it can change your life. Remember that the majority of people that I met after not fitting in, as I mentioned in the welcoming episode, I've all met them online. It is so fun. These are the reasons why I'm so passionate about travel, inner work, astrology, and all sorts of stuff in between. I really want to hear your story. Think about it deeply if you are thinking immediately that you don't have any specific story. And through time, you will just have an aha moment. You will say, yeah. That time when I was in Canada and that synchronicity led to this location or this person and it activated X, Y, Epsilon. That was my thought process. And it led me to profound answers. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and let's connect and spread the message about remote activation because it can help and heal so many people out there. So have a beautiful day and see you around. Bye.